Welcome to the Irish NFL show. It is the morning after the night before. Actually, technically, it's the morning after the morning that just ended a short time ago if you were up watching Bears-Packers overnight. And if you've been watching the wildcard action so far, the Super Wildcard weekend, it has actually justified the Sobriquet Super this time around. Kieran, we've seen two back and forward games where it looked like one team was going to run away with it and then the script flipped, both in Rams, Panthers and Bears, Packers. But we have to start at Soldier Field with an incredibly dramatic wildcard game that looked like it would be anything but at halftime. I mean, both of us, and we knew this coming in, right? We committed to doing the Instant Reaction podcast on the Sunday morning in, as we said, what's been a great slate of wildcard games so far. We knew one of us was going to be devastated and one of us was going to be elated. We just didn't quite know how we were going to get there. At halftime, early this morning, I'm thinking, Jesus, this looks like a college game. One team just looks so much better than the other. It's like I'm watching an SEC powerhouse like Georgia or Alabama take down West Appalachian State receivers, Green Bay receivers in 5 yards of space, able to do whatever they want on both sides of the ball. Chicago able to get nothing going offensively. At halftime, I'm thinking, oh my God, how much worse can this get from a Bears perspective?
Yeah, I'm exhausted, Conor. I'm mentally and physically drained after that. Look, first off, as you said, what an advertisement for this for wildcard weekend and for this playoff bracket, and let's just hope it continues in the same vein going forward, because there were two absolutely cracking games last night from a neutral perspective, not necessarily from a fan perspective. But yeah, like you saw Jekyll and Hyde. You saw Jekyll and Hyde on both sides last night, on both sides of the ball. Look, I didn't come into this game with much hope based on momentum, based on the fact that the Packers were riding a 4-game losing streak, and the Bears just had that, they were on the rising tide, albeit after kind of limping in after the loss against the Lions. And at halftime, yeah, I mean, the first half was so clinical from the Packers on offense. They were just having their way. They were just moving the ball up and down the field. Every receiver was on it. Christian Watson was on it. Romeo Doubs had a fantastic game. Matthew Golden finally broke out, I think, and showed his potential for next season, which is a huge plus from a Packers point of view. And at halftime, I had friends I had a friend, a Chicago Bears fan in Vancouver. He was kind of jabbing at me, kind of saying, "You picked the Packers. You picked the Bears. How do you feel now?" And a Packers fan as well texted me all through the game. But we'd seen this story too many times before. And even though it looked like it should have been a formality in the second half, we'd seen it too, on both teams. We'd seen the Packers give up these big leads, not just to the Bears, but to the Broncos as well. And we've seen it, season after season. But on the Bears side, they just hang around. They're the cardiac kids. They're, and like, this is what's absolutely stunning about watching Caleb Williams, is the fact that he can be so off kilter for 2-3 quarters. I mean, the Bears fans were booing. The air had been taken out of the stadium, and yet you still felt, listen, Caleb Williams can flick a switch. And I mean, even when the Bears fans were on his back, even when, Ben Johnson looked a bit rattled with failed 4th down calls, Caleb was on the sideline. He was willing everyone around him, and he had that energy. And the second half just proved to be, what you dreaded as a Packers fan and what you hope for as a Bears fan. And yeah, I don't know what to say about the Packers side of the ball, but yeah, let's get into it.
and it's hard to boil the game down, or any game really, into any given moment that turned it, because firstly, I always think that's a kind of a fallacy, and secondly, in a game that had this much ebb and flow, that's a fool's errand. But there's one particular 3 and 4 back and forward, like violently swinging momentum plays on the drive where the Bears go for it again on 4th down. They dial up a passing play, which has me nearly put my foot through the screen at that point. Like, why on 4th and 1 are you trying to throw the ball? You have a great running game. You have one of the best offensive lines in the league. You have a speedy quarterback. You can run any type of running play you want and get that yard. Why would you throw for it? And it ends up being picked off. The Packers come out. They have an O-lineman picking up a ball and rumbling at one stage, looking like he's played running back. The ball gets knocked out. He fumbles it. And the Bears jump on it, only it squeezes out of bounds. And I thought at that point, wow, that's like all those breaks that the Bears were getting during the regular season, they've used up the monkey's paw at this stage. There's no more luck left, and it's done. I thought, yeah, the Packers will get out here. They'll drive down the field. They end up having to punt, and it's again, you could call this a game of two halves, but I don't think even that fully describes it, because the Bears are stopping the Packers after halftime, and credit to the Bears defense, it did step up and they did make changes. They were so abject in the first half, and the Packers just doing whatever they want, seeming to get guys open and converting, particularly on third down, dagger after dagger on the Bears. Suddenly that stops, and the Bears are getting stops and they're getting the ball back, but they can't do anything with it. They have 3 trips to the red zone. They settle for 2 field goals and they turn the ball over. And it's only then that the tide actually starts to turn. So it's not, quite fair to say that it all changed after halftime, because it didn't. It started to change, but it was still very much in doubt. What I cannot figure, and you and I have talked about this before from a Packers perspective, is when they look good, they just look so good. They look like the best team in the league. Their range from when they're playing at their best to when they're playing at their worst is so yawningly wide, because they execute so well, they tackle so well, they do everything right. They fly to the ball on defense. Guys do smart things on offense. LaFleur is in his bag, and he's just able to do whatever he almost whatever he wants at will. And when it goes, it goes.
Yeah, and like, you're so right. The Packers were getting all those rubs of the green, and they were not. I mean, the Bears weren't getting anything easy. They weren't getting anything, handed to them, because those, as you said, those strokes of luck that the Bears have had throughout the season, they weren't getting them. Those they were falling to the Packers. And look, if you want to get into it, I mean, you can, as a Packers fan, if you want to defend the Packers, you can point to certain things and if you want to defend Matt LaFleur, you can point to certain elements that were out of his control. Adrian Cooper was having a great game on defense, first of all, and losing him was not helpful. They thought they were going to get Zach Tom back, and they had injuries on the offensive line. Even in the second half, they lost their guard, lost their center, and the protection seemed to collapse a little bit. And credit Dennis Allen, he did adjust, and he got a huge amount of pressure in the second half that just wasn't there in the first half.
It was night and day, wasn't it, on both sides? And
absolutely.
The touchdown throw, which again was on 3rd and long in the first half, the one that went, was it Dobbs or Watson, I think it was, in the corner.
Yeah,
Love just has all day. Like, I'm shouting at the TV going, no pressure at all. Like, you're just having a hope playing like that. And in the second half, suddenly Jordan Love is on the back foot. He's hurried, and they start finally, the Bears, to get a bit of play, and the Packers offense just grinds into the dirt.
Yes, and so to credit Jordan Love, he was working he seemed to be working with a lot less in the second half. He had less time. He was under more pressure, and to be fair to him, I don't think he had any support from the run game. I think Josh Jacobs, he just wasn't his night. I mean, he had one big run, but they could not get the run game going, and they lacked imagination in the run game. And and to be critical then of the Packers, I mean, on the whole, the definition of insanity is when you do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. And they were, every run seemed to be up the middle. And like I mentioned Jekyll and Hyde, and this is why we may get into the Matt LaFleur conversation, and why Packers fans are now really clamoring for him for changes. Because look, we've been here before. We've seen all this before. We've seen special teams. We haven't even talked about the missed kicks, the 7 points that they missed. But we've seen that the imagination just slip away when Matt LaFleur and when the offense is under pressure. And the receivers that were wide open in the first half, they just, he couldn't scheme anyone open in the second half. And it was absolute chalk and cheese. And on the other side of the ball, you had Caleb Williams had his guy in Colston Loveland, and just a nod to Colston Loveland. And we've talked about, whether the Bears may be criticized at the end of the season for choosing Colston Loveland over Tyler Warren, and especially the way Tyler Warren started the season. While Tyler Warren's star slightly faded, I mean, he didn't have a bad. I mean, he was excellent all season. He slightly faded. Colston Loveland has just risen to become an absolute star. He had something like 130 yards, 10 or 11 catches last night, and he was just the man every time Caleb Williams wanted an outlet, and it just, you wonder what could have been if the Packers had Tucker Kraft, and I'm really struggling to not make excuses on this, and that's not what I'm trying to do, but it was.
But
just,
it is,
yeah,
like,
it was
you cannot. you cannot, as you say, and you're so right, you can't tell the story of this game without looking at those missed kicks because it changes everything. Like, and as well as the Bears did to hang in there and just limit the damage, first of all, before they finally found a couple of big plays and got themselves back into the game and put the doubt into the Packers' minds. It's a missed field goal just before halftime. Like, it should have been 24-3 at halftime, and it wasn't. Packers get the ball back after halftime, and you're thinking at 24-3, all they need is a field goal, and the game is done. All the air had come out of the building already at that point, and just a missed field goal gives them the Bears, just a glimmer of hope going into halftime. But even the two missed field goals aside, it's a missed extra point that means that when the Bears go for two after scoring their go-ahead touchdown, the Packers have to score a touchdown, and that is the critical element on that final drive. There's no doubt in my mind that if it's down to having to score a field goal to tie or win the game, Jordan Love absolutely has that in his bag all day long. He has 1:36 on the clock, and the Packers still had a timeout, but forcing them to have to go down the field and score a touchdown narrows down the playbook from a Packers perspective, and it allows the Bears to just sit and play everything in front of them, and it's way too difficult, and it's too much to put the quarterback in this situation. And again, it's complementary football. Everybody's got to do their job, and all these things add up.
And it moves the needle so much, as you said. It changes what the defense has to do completely. It's night and day. Look, McManus had a day to forget, and he's the kicker, and a lot of the responsibility will fall on him. We'll talk about kickers. We've talked about them all year long. But Rich Bisaccia, and I mentioned before we came on, he's the highest paid special teams coordinator in the league. Packers fans have been clamoring for his removal for several seasons because, if I had spoken to you last week, and I've been speaking about it all season, I would have told you we're going to have a special teams collapse. There's going to be, the Packers are going to have a special teams letdown, whether it's a muffed kick return, whether it's a big return given, holding calls, constant holding calls on kickoffs. And just the difference between what they gain on special teams versus what they allow. They are consistently second last to last. They're 30 to 32nd on special teams every season, and it's huge. It makes a huge difference. The kicking is one thing, but and you talk about Einstein and doing this, doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, it took a couple of years for the Packers fans to finally be heard, and for the Packers to remove Joe Barry. And we talk about Matt LaFleur, how much of a good man manager he is. You'd wonder, is he a little bit loyal to a fault in keeping these guys around a lot longer than they deserve? And the only other thing, the only other criticism that I would heap on the coaching staff for this game as well is, look, when Ben Johnson had to have his bag of tricks, he had them. He had a certain amount of plays just ready to go. He dusted them off, and that final touchdown pass to DJ Moore was an absolute gem. And like that was kept for that moment.
The thing that I thought watching that was, it's a very Matt LaFleur like play. Just the way they stacked the trips and foxed the Packers defensive backs. You didn't think it was going to DJ Moore. Luther Burden goes in the flat. You're thinking all day long it's going to Colson Loveland on the post route, and suddenly Moore is wide open. You're like, how are you leaving a guy wide open like that? It's just a really well drawn up play. That's the kind of thing that I love that Matt LaFleur does. It kills me when he does it against the Bears. In
the first half, you saw a beautiful clear out by Christian Watson where he took two defenders away from the corner, and I can't remember, was it Watson or Dobbs or Reed went in, and that was it. That was Matt LaFleur flying high. But Matt LaFleur had his bag of tricks on the sideline all through the game. You know how hard it was for the Bears to cope with Malik Willis, and people were clamoring for the Packers to just have a package. Like, you didn't have to take take the keys off Jordan Love to get Malik Willis into the game. I mean, Jordan Love is a big boy, and he's smart enough to see the Bears really struggling to cope with Malik Willis. And even if just when things are going a little bit against us, get him on for a drive, get him on for a couple of plays and unsettle the Bears. Just give them something to think about until we can find our feet again. Or even when they were up 27,
Start of the second half, to your point, I would have thought would have been the perfect moment, right? You got insurance here. It's a 3-possession lead. You can do something here, and how morale sapping would it have been for the Bears to see Malik Willis in his elements, just as he was at Soldier Field. Like, he was the one player that a lot of Bears, well, apart from Christian Watson and Jordan Love and that connection, he's probably the one player that a lot of Bears fans were worried about, because we just didn't seem to have answers for him in that last game.
And even in the loss to the Ravens, he was outstanding. He was absolutely outstanding. And like, that was after the team had the opposition had a week to scheme for him and prepare for him, and I didn't think he would be as good as he was, and he still was. He was excellent, and he'll never play for a snap for the Packers again. So I mean, that's out the door now. But look, we can talk about the numbers, we can talk about the tangibles, so to speak. But the bottom line and the brass tacks of it is, when you watched the third and fourth quarter last night, when it came down to it, you can tell an awful lot by body language and by, energy is real. It's, I've played a lot of sport. Momentum, energy, mindset is real. And when you looked at the sideline and when you looked under center last night, even when the Bears were still 2 scores down, Caleb Williams was marching up the field unerred. He looked confident. He looked, absolutely like the man that was going to do the job. Ben Johnson on the sideline, as arrogant and as brash as he has been, he's backed himself up this season. And like,
do you know what I love?
No Bears fan wouldn't want him.
I'm sure you hated this on the other side, was just how cursory his handshake with Matt LaFleur was.
Oh, it's horrendous, yeah.
Pure mind games. It's like, fuck you, buddy. I moved
horrendous
on to the next game already. Like,
yeah.
I thought there might be an embrace or we're buddies at the end of this. It's like, no, I'm done with you. I thought that
was... he might well be done with him in the division now. But like, you contrast it to when the sideline shifts to the camera's pans to Matt LaFleur in the second half. He looked panicked. He looked.
It was head down. There was a lot of man. Whereas Johnson is just a sphinx the whole way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
but I can't overstate to you though. I can't overstate to you the shift in psychology in Chicago. And as a Bears fan, and the best way I can explain this to you is, right, firstly, I feel you on the special teams thing. I've seen the double doink send the Bears out of the playoffs against the Eagles in 2018. We absolutely just collapsed against the Saints in 2020. Watched the Packers win at Soldier Field in the NFC Championship game on the way to their playoff run. The last season in which the Bears won a playoff game, even that season, we couldn't have anything nice because we had to watch our rivals go and lift the Lombardi. So I feel you. I feel for you. But I was at one of the international games last season when the Bears played the Jacksonville Jaguars at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London, and the Bears are up like 21 points or whatever. This was before the Jags got Liam Cohn and things started to turn around for them, and we'll talk about their game tomorrow, or later on tonight, I should say. The Bears are 21 points up, and Bears fans are singing Green Bay sucks. And you're sitting there going, wow, is this all we've got? Like, is this who we are as a franchise? It's not, we can't even enjoy what little success in those days that we're actually getting. It's all about Green Bay. Like, the Packers just live 100% rent-free in the Bears' head. That has changed. That's gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
This season has made just a huge difference in that. And we talked about it. We had Adam Rank on the show during the week, a big Bears fan, and he was saying, he felt confident about it, but he felt most Bears fans would only feel confident or would feel more confident playing literally any other team. There's so much baggage with Green Bay. But for the first time now, as a Bears fan, really since Brett Favre arrived for Green Bay, I don't go into every game expecting the Bears to lose. And you got to think about it from a Caleb Williams perspective. He's played the Packers 5 times now. He's 3-2 in those games. Ben Johnson's come in and played 3 games against the Packers, and he's 2-1. Like, why wouldn't they feel like they should be winning? And
so they should. And like, that's, I mean, there's a great coaching kind of term. I've heard a lot recently. It's about when a coach goes in, you should not be looking to raise the ceiling. You need to be raising the floor. You need to raise what is expected from the fan base. And if you're not moving that floor up, you can peak and you can have great days, but it's not sustainable. And, as a fan base, you want to be moving forward. And I loved the, I listened to Adam Rank. It was a great listen, and I loved his golfing analogy about, you can go into a game with certain expectations. You can go into a season with certain expectations, but when the bar is raised, you can't just say, well, you talk about house money. You can't just take that for granted. You can't just accept that when standards raise, it's okay for them to drop back down again. Like, I didn't come into this game with a huge amount of hope last night as a Packers fan because of the nature of how the season had finished. However, at 2.5 scores up when it was a 3-score game at halftime, you have to be expecting, to close that out. And I know Packers fans and we get a little bit of stick about, being the spoiled franchise and expecting success. But look, the fact of the matter is now that the Packers have been the 7th seed 3 years in a row. If the 7th seed didn't exist, they would have missed the playoffs 4 years in a row. They've flattered to deceive, except, barring, one great night against the Cowboys. And fair enough, they put it up to the 49ers. But if you're sitting in that kind of in that position, no Packers fan or no fan base should feel ashamed to want more. And fair enough, the Packers might well make a change, and they might find themselves in the basement again over the next few years. You might have that period, but what did Jordan say? You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. If you accept where you are, then it becomes stale very quickly. We talk about this with the Steelers fans and how the purgatory they're in. So like the Bears fans now, that's the standard, and the Bears fans are going to expect more and they're going to want more. Who knows how far they'll go this season. I mean, they could go all the way this season. There's no reason they couldn't. But even if they don't next season, that's exactly what Bears fans are going to be expecting. Similar to Panthers fans, and and we can get to that in a minute because they've seemed to have raised the floor as well.
No, all I could think of at the end of that game was the Owen Wilson speech at the start of Old School, the wedding. True love is hard to find. Sometimes you think you have it.
Keep going if you want.
Yeah, I'm not going to go. You can watch that at your leisure. It's not safe for work, but we'll leave that one there. But that I imagine very much was your emotion in that moment. Let's talk about Rams Panthers though, because what a great way to start the weekend. And we laughed about these games, and you think it's usually Texans Bengals. There's a whole meme that goes back to the late podcaster, Lord rest him, Chris Wessling, who used to call it West of Us because the Bengals, of whom he was a big fan, were always stuck in that slot, and it was always the Bengals or the Texans, like the team people most want. With all due respect to their fan bases, just see out of the picture so we can enjoy the rest of the playoffs. The poor Panthers found themselves in that zone this year, but give them their absolute due, because even when it was going against them, they were never out of that fight. I came out of that hugely impressed. But with the Panthers, and I'll say it because we spent a lot of time firing shots at him on the live show last week. Bryce Young stepped up in a massive spot, in the biggest spot he's ever been in his career. And when they needed him most, he was money.
Yeah, so this game started out, and as I said, it feels like about 2 years ago now, this game, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, was it 3-and-out for the Panthers, touchdown Rams, turnover, a pick, touchdown Rams, and we're there in the WhatsApp group. Okay, let's just move on from this, on to the next one. This, stop, he's already dead. That kind of it had that kind of a feel, and as exactly,
I believe,
as you said,
and cheeks was the assessment of the Panthers at that point.
Yeah, Kieran Boyle is an absolute poet and a scholar. But it was heading that way, and absolute credit to the Panthers fan base as well for sticking with them and keeping the noise and keeping the faith, and to Bryce Young and to these receivers, and Chuba Hubbard for just clawing their way back. It was a Chuba Hubbard run, and then an excellent scramble and run by Bryce Young. He showed a lot of grit. He showed a lot of fight in that game. And look, I might sound hypocritical of what you can expect from a team and what you can accept as, we'll say, a moral victory. But look, this was a 10.5 point spread. Nobody expected the Panthers to come within an ass's roar of a win here. And they had the go-ahead touchdown after, with a couple of minutes to go. Jalen Coker coming up with a career night over 130 yards. He had 10 or 11 catches as well. When all the talk was probably about how they'd need Ted McMillan, how they'd need Rico Dowdle, how they'd need Chuba Hubbard, they didn't come close to 100 yards on the ground. So really, really gutsy performance by Carolina. Having said that, midway through the game, when it looked like Carolina may steal it, I was kind of thinking, look, I'm delighted with the story, but it's the Rams I want to see next week. As a neutral, they're the exciting team. They're the team that can go all the way. But it wasn't happening. I mean, Matt Stafford, at the start of the Cardinals game last week, we looked at some wobbly throws from Matthew Stafford, and I was kind of thinking, what's going wrong? Until he erased all that and just romped home. But there was a lot of that again last night, and the wind may have played a factor. It looked really, really gusty when you're watching Phoebe Schechter on the sideline there. It's just that everything was blowing all over the place. The post is just blowing in the wind behind her. But Bryce Young dealt with it a lot better than Matt Stafford for the first 2.5, 3 quarters, and there was a lot of balls uncharacteristic.
He's so small, you see. It probably isn't that windy that
cutting through the wind. Maybe so, but like there was some, barring an immaculate start by Puka Nacua where he looked like he was going to have about 20 catches. There was a couple of uncharacteristic drops from him. Devontae Adams looked a little bit ring rusty, and Stafford just seemed to, like, his touch was a little bit off. He had that, that moment where I think he got chewed out by Sean McVay for not scrambling. Maybe it was for not scrambling.
That's what it looked like to me. Yeah, because it was there. I think he only had about 3 yards to gain, and God bless him, like he wouldn't have the greatest wheels in the world.
No, and as I said,
it's like watching a toddler on a tricycle in terms of the wheels he has. Like they're not doing great.
I don't care what the situation is. I don't sense Matthew Stafford scrambling for anything, like, because you lose him, you lose your season. But yeah, and even Sean McVay, he was rattled. I mean, he had a few massive confrontations with various members of staff and players on the sideline. But no, look, I credit to them. Stafford finished it out, and he showed why he is an MVP candidate with that the final drive.
Big time. I don't know what to make of them. And we said when we were picking this game, like, my assessment of it was there's so many ways the Rams can win the game. There's only really one way the Panthers can win it, which is, they're going to need turnovers. They're going to need a special teams failure or two by the Rams. And they were getting all of that. And it was looking like it might actually go in that direction. And credit to the Rams, because as you say, when you need Matthew Stafford, he delivers. That's why he's the likely MVP, the presumptive MVP this season, and they have so many weapons and so many different ways they can beat you. It's an outrageous catch by Colby Parkinson, by the way, for the earlier touchdown. Like, what unbelievable hands, and to stay in bounds and go in over the pylon when they really needed it. But good and all as they are, and multifaceted and all as they are, they still concern me because we keep seeing them in these weird situations. And you can make excuses for all of their losses this season. And I talked about that before. Yeah, there's a blocked field goal here, or there's a kind of a weird, just one-off defensive stand by the 49ers there, and credit to them. Like, there's little asterisks or little things that you can point to and say, yeah, that's a one-off. But when one-offs keep happening all the time, it's a feature, not a bug. And there is something just not quite right with this Rams team. I still wouldn't be surprised if they end up lifting the Lombardi at the end of it all. But equally, I can see them getting knocked off if they don't get their act together. Yeah,
and I think as the weeks go on, teams will fear them less and less because, again, you see history repeating itself. Another special teams, error where the block was absolutely non-existent, and the punter just kicked straight. And we were, I was watching this at a friend's house last night, and we were saying, we like the guys who are watching it, we come from kind of a rugby GA background. More,
I was going to say, you took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, go on. I know the point you're going to make here.
When you're lining up to kick a ball and you see someone come to block you, you're kind of aware of it, and you step to the side, and these guys just seem to be robots. They seem to kick it.
These guys watching clips of David Clifford, he'll show you how to fake out a defender, and away you go.
Yeah, no, the problem is when you're punting and you sidestep one guy, there's another guy going to absolutely cream you as well. So, like, you're going to lose the yardage anyway. But I'd rather take a hit than risk, a block and giving up a touchdown. So, but you're kind of, because of the nature of the team and because of the resume that Sean McVay has put together, you're expecting a switch to be flicked at some point, and for it all to be rosy in the garden. And at times it's just not happening. And you look at teams like the Eagles who can do it. You've looked at teams like the Chiefs who can do it. But how many times have we talked about muscle memory? I don't think the Rams have that muscle memory built up for that fan base to say, no, if we're in the doldrums here late on, we can do it. I guess, Matt Stafford never believes he's beaten. And that is one thing that will carry an awful lot of weight. And I don't know if you heard Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua talk about what Matt Stafford said in the huddle before the last drive. It was something ice cold. He said something like, let's just clutch these guys' hearts, or let's rip these guys' hearts out, or something like that. But in the moment, they just...
It always sounds much better when you win than when you lose, right? You never hear what might have said in the huddle after you lose. I'm sure quarterbacks say that on every single huddle in those situations, and it only survives for posterity if they get the right result.
But it reminds me of a story that's often told about Joe Montana before he went down on a final game-winning drive in the Super Bowl. I think it was against the Bengals, where they were all in the huddle. Everybody was nervous. I think there was like offensive linemen dry heaving, and Joe Montana went, he got into the huddle and he said, he looked down the other end of the field and he said, oh, look, there's John Candy. And everyone was just kind of like, oh, all right, okay, let's go. And then he just methodically picked them apart and went down and won the Super Bowl. So, if you can hear your leader being that composed and that confident, it must go an awful long way.
Yeah, well, we have a long way to go in the playoffs yet, and it's gotten off to an absolutely uh, gangbuster start. Let's be frank, we've had 2 great games in the books. We hope for 4 more before the wildcard weekend is done. No, have I miscounted there? No, we've 4 games left, right? Just so
Yeah.
excited with the Bears winning. I can't even count straight. We'll cover them all here on our Monday recap show on the Irish NFL Show. Thanks very much for tuning in. We'll be back with you very soon.